Good afternoon. Welcome to my tutorial on basic silk painting. I'm going to go ahead and show you my setup, and then this initial start will be just applying the resist. So in order to start up, you need your setup. Mine is PVC here. I like using straight pins. This is the way I was taught, straight pins and rubber bands. You get your silk. I've actually already drawn this out, so what you can do now, this is a very simple design that I could have freehanded, but I didn't for the sake of this tutorial to show you how it works. So I basically just blew up the source imagery, taped it together, very rudimentary, nothing fancy, and then you just put it underneath, push down, and you can go ahead and trace. So get this out of the way. Okay, so here's the design. It is on its side, actually. So I just, it was easier for me to trace from this point of view. Just regular old school pencil, guys, nothing fancy. Use your number 2. I do recommend, if you're just starting out there, to leave your lines lighter so that they actually can be removed a little bit. This was such a simple design, I was just... Okay, your resist. As you can see from this pile, this part is messy. But this is what I use. Super messy today. My hands are covered. I just refilled these bottles. So, Jacquard Permanent Water-Based Resist. Good news is that it's water-based, so it will wash off my hands. Bad news is that once it does dry on a surface, you will probably have to use acetone to clean it off. And then these are my favorite bottles. I rack up 3 of them in advance, especially if I'm going to be working on a lot of projects. So if I could have my lovely assistant come over and take the camera so I can get this going, because I'm not a lefty. Hold it right there. Okay. So this one is my leaky tip. Of course I grabbed my leaky tip first. Let's try this one. Okay, the reason why I love these guys is that they come with this, stops the clogging. There's a few options out there. Find what you like the best. Obviously, if I want to do a thicker line, I need something better. But this is the fine line applicator wide tip. You can get these from Dharma Trading. So I'm going to test it real quick on the paper towel, make sure that everything looks kosher and is flowing nicely. Good amount of resist on my squeeze end without anything looking too runny. I had an issue where I had a runny batch of resist. So, all right, I'm going to show you guys how to do this very simply. Again, super easy design. I'll be doing something for more complicated applications a different time. So we're going to start over here. Always start closest to you, unless you have something bigger. Then you will want to start from the inside and work out. But this is a small enough piece to where I'm not terribly worried about making any glaring errors. There's no rush in this. It's not a race. You're going to take your time. So I'm going to kind of run this like so. Make sure where your resist joins up that there's no holes. Paint leaks out of holes. If you can do it in one fell swoop like I am, great. If you can't, don't freak out. So I'm gonna clean up some patches there. I'm gonna try to run this guy straight across and then go over to that end. If you need to move, move. Don't try to overdo it. Silk painting is not the time to try to start yoga. And when I do my more advanced tutorial and you see a larger piece, you will understand better. These smaller guys with simple heraldry like this, are the best way to start. Okay. So I just applied resist on this piece of heraldry. It's going to take anywhere from about a half hour to 2 hours to dry. You can see how it's wet. Like over here, hon, so they can see like where it's puddling a little bit. It's definitely shiny wet. This is not like your fabric paint from the 1980s that stays shiny looking. This needs to go matte flat. So when I pull up my second banner, which I have waiting for me, drying right now, to begin the color process, I will go ahead and go over that with you before I begin applying color. So hold on tight, I'll be back in just a minute. Welcome back. Everything is dry now, and I made mistakes, so I get to show you how to fix mistakes. But first, let's look at our paint and our implements of destruction. So this is Dynaflow. You can purchase it from Dharma. Obviously, the bigger the bottle, the more expensive it will be. But here's your colors that we'll be working with today. We have emerald green, violet, and sun yellow for this guy. Okay. You can see my painting implements are foam brushes. You can get these at any home improvement store or even at Michael's and other craft stores. So I'm going to let my lovely assistant take over the camera. Thank you, darling. Now, I made a mistake up here. I ended up moving it too quickly, and I smeared the resist. I'm not thrilled because I didn't want to do it, but at the same time, I get to show people how to fix a mistake. For now, we're just going to go ahead and get our base layer of paint down, and then I am going to attempt to hide it and disguise it using some shading later on today. So let's get started. So when you use the foam roller, the foam paint brush thingies, make sure you squeegee them out. You don't want them being too loaded up. A little bit goes a long way. I'm not even going to use all that paint in there. All I'm going to do is just kind of gently touch. And you can see it spreading to the lines of the resist. And down here, take it slow. Slow and steady, but also somewhat quickly. It does dry quickly, and it is going to spread. Make sure you get that little bit in the corner. Fills right in. Over here, and as you can see, I haven't dipped the brush again. There's still a lot of paint in here. Okay. Now I'll dip again, squeegee again. I'm going to work on this longer piece right here now. In case you're wondering why I started with yellow and not purple or green, there is kind of an order of operation. And that general order of operation is light to dark, not necessarily a convenience factor on where in the banner you want to paint. While it is good to work from the inside to the out, the reason for light to dark is that it's easier to hide mistakes when you work lighter to dark. So if this splashes over into the area where there's going to be green, it's going to be much easier for me to cover versus the green splashing over into the yellow. I'm coming on that side. Another thing too is that you still have to work, like I said, take it easy, but you still gotta work kind of quick. The reason for that is that streaks are going to happen. They are unavoidable, but as long as you move in one direction, you should be able to control them. And that's it. The yellow is done. Just that quickly. I'm gonna set that down though, just in case I have to go back for a touch-up. And now I'm going to go to the purple. The reason I'm doing the purple is that I need to let that yellow dry. If I end up dropping green into that yellow while it's still wet, it will spread. So we're going to go ahead and get this purple done. Same technique, only now I need to focus on making sure that I saturate the edges completely. and hope that it doesn't go. Sometimes you gotta be careful right here where the resist goes over the edge. Sometimes it likes to jump a border, so I'm hoping it doesn't do that today. I think I got it on there pretty good though. I'm gonna be working from here to here. Just again. Technically the green is lighter than the purple, but we're gonna keep our fingers crossed. See how wet this looks too. That's also a serious cause of streaking, and I didn't squeegee out my brush enough. So we're just gonna kind of move that. Notice how I'm not bringing the brush right up against the resist. Come back for more of that. And then bring it in here. Those edges, and bring it up. I will also note, some colors are going to streak more than others. Some colors are going to play not so nice with others. And unfortunately, that's just the nature of the art. The more practice you get, the better you'll get. And the better things will start to look. That's also part of the reason why I'm doing this indoors. I live in Florida. Humidity is consistently an issue. If I had that sliding glass door behind the camera open right now on a hot day, this would never dry. And things would just become more and more problematic. Notice even as I switched positions around the banner, I'm still working in the same direction. If I started changing my brush orientation or decided to start, let's say on this end over here and then work into the middle, I'd have a big ugly streak in the middle just because of how quickly it does dry on that level. I'm gonna finish this up here and then probably give that yellow a bit more time. A little bouncy. If it is a little bouncy, slow down. Because if your brush gets stuck on a pin or it bounces too much, little drops of paint can and will splash into unpainted areas and spread, causing certain disaster. Those edges. Okay. When I hit pause, give that yellow a bit more time to set, and then I'll be back with the green. Time for the green. Okay, so this part's not going to be as simple as the purple. As you can see, it's starting to dry down and get a bit more of a transparent look to it. Because this has like sneaky little areas, it's going to take a little bit more creative maneuvering with the sponge applicator. But the first thing I'm going to do is go in and fill in this area, and then when I get to that side, I'll fill in that area as well, probably last. Same thing as before, I'm going to start on one side and then just slowly work my way across. But let's get this in. And as you can see, remember how I told you about how you wanted it to dry? I just accidentally went over the edge a little bit, and the green is not spreading, and that's super important, even though I made a tiny little bit of a mistake. It happens. Okay, off we go. Don't forget your edges. All right, now, this is where things get a little, this is where that sponge applicator becomes your friend because you can curve it a little bit. Now, I mentioned streaking earlier. I will have a streak there, but it's better to have a streak in a small area than in a large area. So I'm gonna leave that right there for now while I complete these bigger areas at the bottom you don't leave any drops. White space that does not have paint in it is a weak spot in your banner. So after it dries, before I go into shading, I'm going to do a quality control moment. Coming over. I'm going to do a quality control session where I go in with a small paintbrush and fix any patches of visible white silk. You can see here where I have that purple kind of went over a little bit, but now you can barely see it. Watch your pins. Give that paint some room to spread. Alright, Tanya probably have to go behind me so I can just get over here. Watch the other banner. There's another banner over here too. I'll be painting that one momentarily. After this guy is dry, I'm going to switch over to the other banner because that one has different colors and different needed attributes or needed techniques, I guess you can say, including the use of white paint, which I didn't want to skip. I'm still going to skip that hole right there for now because I don't want to make any potential streak over here worse than it's going to be. So if you know there's going to be a streak and you have to lay down paint to move in another direction, do it in the tightest area you can. And as you can see, look, closing in there, you can see that visible streak. That's not going anywhere. Don't try to fix it. From a distance, you won't notice it. And then we're going to go in here. When I'm in like a round area, I do like a little bit of a circular motion to kind of get the paint to saturate the silk and move out a little bit quicker. But just like that, the green is done. So I'm going to let this dry like I did before. Try to clean up some of this extra. Did I miss a spot? Thank you. So make sure, like I said, make sure your edges, make sure you go through, double check any white spots, even on the edges, even if you're going to put ties in. So I'm going to go ahead, let this completely dry. I'm going to pull up the next banner once this is safe enough to set aside and air dry for a while. Put down my base color on that, and then I'm going to revisit both banners for shading this evening. Okay, so look, it's a completely different banner. How did that happen? Truth is I had this on the side waiting, but anyways, I'm going to go ahead and paint this one next. This one actually is counterchanged and has white on the banner. What do you do when you need to leave white space on the banner? The answer is not leave it unpainted. If you leave unpainted silk, it creates a weak spot. So there is actually white paint. Dynaflow makes it. I clearly need to order more. So white paint can be a little tricky because it doesn't show up that easily. So what you might see me do are some really weird yoga, some silk painting yoga. You can see these smaller places. I'm just kind of being very gentle. Now you can see I made a boo-boo with the resist right there. The resist unfortunately was a little too diluted and it came out and sort of spread and kind of gooped out, unfortunately, and then I ended up switching out my bottles. But it happens. The best thing I can do to suggest, unless it's a massive mistake from your resist, is to just let it ride. because unless you have a big explosion or a big smear that you cannot cover, it's really not worth trying to extract from the silk. In fact, it might actually cause more problems. So, back to the white. It's really hard to see it spread. Yeah, I'm going to show people how to do that. You have to get down like this and look at where the silk is wet or not. So I can see a few different spots. Like this little guy right here. And then I think you pointed out something over here, right? I think it's all pretty good. I'll come on the other side too in a second, just in case, but I can, let me get over there. I can see, you can kind of see how it's wet at that point, but then I'm gonna go ahead and start. Smaller areas are tough. As I mentioned previously, you do your white and your light colors first to make sure that the darker colors don't spread into the area and cause significant irreparable damage. Small spots I can fix. Big spots, not so easy to fix. But this is going pretty quick. Again, these are small banners. And that's it for the white. I'm gonna let it get in there. White also has the benefits of not showing a lot of streaks. It can, but for the most part you don't notice. It's also extremely important for when we get into shading, which is going to be our next step. So, the opposite of the white is going to be the yellow. This is where things are going to start getting a little hinkier. So what I'm going to do for these smaller areas is grab a Q-tip. I'm going to start down here and get into these little spots here. What I told you about streaks earlier too. So streaks become less visible when you bottleneck them. So I'm going to use this to get into the tighter squeezes up to bottlenecks where I can bring the sponge applicator into. I'm going to spread out a little bit, but you're not going to notice. You're probably not going to notice them. So I'm going to work from here that way. Extra up. Here we go. When doing large swaths of one color, you'll notice when I re-dip my brush, I tend to start a little away from where I stopped, and that's just to help thwart harsh lines, and I can just bring it back and kind of work it over. Like I said, though, nothing is foolproof. Streaks are unfortunate and kind of the a product of the art form. So put that in there. I can always revisit those little tighter squeezes later, but I want to make sure we get these bigger areas more full. I'm going to try to get this up to that bottleneck a bit better. I'm really kind of stretching right now, but this way I can help thwart any potential potential streaking, but I think I moved fast enough there. circular motion. Get into those corners. Remember, you don't have to bring the brush right up to the resist. The paint will do that itself. Get out of the way of a brand. Now after this, I'm going to go back and find those white spots real quick, and then move on to the next colors once these lighter colors are dry. I think I did pretty good. There's a little bit of yellow overlapping where the red is going to be, but you're really not going to notice that. But I think yellow is one of those sneaky ones where those little white areas are not going to show up until you get the contrast in there. So we're going to go ahead and let this dry, and I will be back with hopefully completed blue and red in the Counterchange and ready to go ahead and share. All right, we're going into shading now. As you can see, the blue and the yellow, the blue and the red have completely magically appeared in the time that we have been filming. So shading, some people think it's super difficult. The truth is that it's not. What it does take is patience. The banner needs to be either completely dry or at least mostly dry. This coat on this banner now is now completely dry. So what I do typically is that I work with colors that are either a darker shade derivative of the ones that I'm working on, or I also blend my own. My most famous blend, I can't believe I just said that. I made my own gray. This is kind of like my own gray blend. It's black, I think a touch of like midnight blue, and then some white. And I recycle my Auntie Arwen's jars because that's good. But to start, I'm going to take the red and I'm going to create my initial shading using brick red, just a little brick red here from Dharma. And I do most of my shading with a Q-tip. So all you're going to do is just gently go in where a natural shadow would occur. Now when you have, so you have your pale here, you have your field division, you're not actually going to, don't shadow your field division. That might just make things look a little weird. So I have these acorns and I'm just going to kind of give a little bit of a natural shadow to the shape of the acorn here. If this doesn't give me as much shadow as I want, I have the ability to go back with that gray and create more definition. But for right now, I just wanted to start with this. This is obviously where, if you have previous art skills, they are going to come in handy. So I do apologize if I move a little quick. Think of a light source, shine a light on something, and work from there. Especially here where you have the caps and then the bottoms of the acorns, you're going to want to, I'll probably end up pulling some gray in there momentarily after this layer is dry, of course. Leaves are fun. Or more shadow on the bottom for a leaf. Alright, I'm going to go in, find your little ups and downs here. Your little wobbles on this oak leaf. I don't know if it's called a dag actually on a leaf. I think that's more like a... Is it called a dag actually on a leaf or just a pattern? Do you know? He's just like looking at me like, I have no idea. Dags. You like dags? You know, same thing from the top. Maybe not as much definition on the top. You can also go through with white afterwards. I don't use regular white paint anymore because I realized it wasn't showing up as well. So if I really want a good white highlight punch, I've actually been using white acrylic paint. And I might actually throw it down a little bit on here. So I'm going to come over on that side and work on that half of the bird. Now this is a very simple bird design. There's no outrageous feathers, beak lines, eye lines, or anything like that. So in this case, the shading is going to be very minimal and simple, but I still want to make it pop. So your bottom, maybe do a little bit of feather definition, but not a lot. Remember, you have to make it match on the other side too. Kind of giving it a little bit of a gentle outline here along the bottom. Again, beginner class, simple techniques, simple approaches. To make your silk painting work out awesome. And think of, you know, little divots in here. Here. And of course, by altering the pressure, by lightening it up, you can make a narrower line and then take it down. Give it a little bit more feather definition in there. Again, not a lot. We want a statement, not a manifesto here. All right. I'm going to leave my red like that for now. And then we're going to go into my gray blend here for the white. Shading absolutely does take longer than painting. Allot yourself the time needed. Again, you want it to match, or at least as close as you can to its opposite. As you can see, the gray is not very dark at all. It really just kind of gives that needed definition on the white. And if I want to go in and do anything darker, in the case of, say, where I have a little like blue blop showing up where I don't want it to because, oops, I made a boo-boo, I can do that with black. So I might bring in a little bit of black at the conclusion of this project to kind of really emphasize those little details and kind of hide those imperfections. But there you can see how it's already completely transforming the look of this banner. Again, copy the other side. At least to the best of your ability. And even if it turns out to be a little different, that's kind of cool. I actually screwed up one, like a sun once, where I did, the sun rays were totally wrong on one side, and I got super mad because there's really no way to fix it, but honestly, it looked really kind of neat. So don't beat yourself up when you make those little mistakes. That is something I've had to learn to actually completely grow out of, I guess. Not a whole lot there, but it's making, definitely giving it more of a pop. But the more I look at this, the more I think I am going to go back over this with black for that little bit of an extra something something. You have to let your first layer of shading dry though, otherwise you might have some interesting shimmery effects. And if you look, I had a little bit of a blue blop there. It's kind of getting lost in the shading, which is part of the reason why we do this. Well, this is one of those art forms where you don't want perfect to be the enemy of the good, because you're never going to achieve perfect. it's true. Like, I have spoken with my teachers out in Kaid, and they're like, yeah, sure. But you can hide your sins. You can actually hide those little blops of mistakes that will happen and provide a just a better looking product overall as far as shading goes. So that's it. That's my first layer of shading on this design. That wasn't difficult at all. There was really not a lot of work, nothing spectacular, and I provided a lot more definition on those colors. I'm grabbing my black right now. Let's see, where'd you go, buddy? Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing like I did before with the Q-tip. Now the black, I'm actually just drawing it out of the lid here. You don't need a lot. Like, I'm talking those tiny little bits. You can even do line work if you want to be fancy. But and that's just giving me a little bit more light play. Barely using it, barely touching it. Otherwise, you might not get the effect that you want. Focus on only where the darkest shadows would be. And the lid. So here in the corner, see that that's a little darker there because I pushed a little too hard. So in the corner, a little bit on your wings, just a smidge. And then down here in the neck. It's like a whole new kind of bird. And you're not losing the primary colors of the charges. You still have your ghouls, you still have your argent. And now I'm going to take that gray and I'm going to go over the red again. The same way I just did the black on the white, and see if I can get the same effect. And I kind of am. It is still a little wet, nothing too schmeary, so to speak. It should still give me the, actually this might still be a little too damp here, but it's not acting funny, so of course if it does act funny, then I just get mad on my video and then show you how to fix it. So again, same idea, light touch, just a little something in there to make it pop. And we're really almost done. Of course, I am going to show you guys eventually how to do a little bit more advanced designs. I might have to go back over and elongate those. I'm kind of getting a little bit of a purple effect in there. I kind of like it. A little bit of extra dark. Wham! There it is. That guy's done. I'm not going to do any more on it because the simplicity of the charges on this heraldry need to be able to speak for itself. Heraldry works at a distance for a reason, and we want to be able to maintain that. The shadowing and the shading in this case just provide extra definition, and that's it. I'm going to switch out to the other banner momentarily, show you how to fix those little smears of resist that I made on it using both the black and the gray and another blend of like a gold that I made, and that'll be the end of this tutorial.
What?
Alright, we're now going to go ahead and shade the other banner, and hopefully if I do this correctly I should be able to obscure that resist mess right there. So this is another custom blend. It's kind of like a gold brown color that I made myself. So we're gonna kind of just work in the shadows first, kind of create a 3D effect. And I'll work on obscuring some of those green paint over smears that I made as well. But again, the shading is just going to help sort of draw the eyes away from these issues. So go around the curves here. Alright, I'm gonna lean in. This is all completely dry now, so leaning on it is not too much of an issue, unless of course I dribble paint, which will be my own dang fault, but as you can see it's already starting to obscure that a little bit, but get over there. Let's see what I can do now. I kind of now any kind of curve should really kind of hold a shadow along the bottom here. I'll go over and get the other one as well. Maybe kind of bring it down just a bit more right there.
Or I cannot be around. You know.
More here and some here. And then on the inside of this one here, kind of again bring it up just a smidge. And lighten it up at the top there to kind of help obscure those mistakes. Same thing here. Along the edges, bring it down into those curves. You have a corner here. You can use those corners to your advantage too if you have some icky stuff going on. So we're gonna kind
I'm here to
of
brief you
use those too.
You are.
Go over to the other side
You can go now.
and just follow that same lead. So
The target is
line around the
conversation.
bottom.
Target, what's that supposed to be?
That's the way the messenger is. Your ship will be seated next to you in first class on a L&B.
This flight is today.
Is that a problem?
No, it just. To be honest, I've never been in an aircraft before. Shouldn't I have luggage or?
In the case.
Of course.
That's all you need. Your credentials will get it through security. We'll open at the appropriate time.
It's probably not a bad start, but we can still make this a little bit better to help hide those issues.
If you wouldn't mind dropping me off while you're going.
You do know I'm a federal agent.
Just a few
Switch over to that magic gray blend of awesomeness. Go in. It might not be dark enough. Let's take a look. Yeah, alright. So in that case, if it's not going to be dark enough to really hide your sins, bust out the big guns, go right for the black,
We're never gonna be able to offer you a job here, darling.
and then make a mess on your table. That's how we do.
You know why?
Okay.
No, I don't actually. Sir, I really need this
Our
job.
background check revealed the charges on your record. Assaulting a police officer.
Oh, look at
You
that.
don't understand. He's the father of my
And that
child.
makes it better.
Just a little bit of...
How? Well, the 21st has the service of Lula. Hey, Kat.
Where are you?
On my way to the airport, apparently. I can't right now. I just want to sign escort duty to DC. The flight's at 1:30 today.
Look at that. It's already like a whole new kind of thing, isn't it?
I'll call you as soon as I can.
A little extra black in these
They should work more
dips.
into the
What the hell is that supposed to mean?
I'm about to attend a funeral service. What do you think it means?
Okay.
Pull over here.
So I think that definitely helped a little bit. But if you still don't think it's enough, I'm gonna, like, you know,
Try.
with that hatching there. Oh, gotta wash my hands. Hold on.
You okay?
Is it on? Okay. So, I had to wash my hands. I spilled black on my hands and I wanted to get it away. So, one of my other secret weapons, this is actually white acrylic paint. Now, this is not something you want to use too freely. It's not going to show up on both sides of the banner. So, on something like this, where you have the option for it to look good on both sides, I'm probably going to have to flip it and put it on the other side as well. But what I can do is that it can give me highlights in places, not a lot, just a quick drop of white, highlights in places to help create a light source and distract the eye from mistakes.
How's it coming? I'm having a hard time understanding how one plan.
If you don't feel comfortable using acrylic like this, don't do it.
Do what you asked. We need to talk.
This is something I've been silk painting now for
Notice that things have changed.
3-ish years, and I've really just kind of started playing with it. So by all means, if you feel a little uncomfortable with the idea of working with it, don't force yourself. But that's about as much as I'm going to put on there. That's it. Just that tiny little bit of white to kind of draw the eyes away from these mistakes right here. But at this point, the hatching that I put down with the black is obscuring enough to where it almost looks kind of sketchy and intentional at that point. So from a distance, someone's going to see the sketch marks and go, oh, it's just an artistic addition. They're not going to look at it as a mistake. And that's what you have to do. Turn your lemons into lemonade. Couple options. I can actually shade this a little bit down here just to give it a little definition. So I'm going to do that on the purple, only I'm going to use Midnight Blue to do that. That's a bubble pop. Alright.
Is your golf on later today?
And this is just a quick
1 o'clock? Maybe we could watch it together.
Shadow. And I am running opposite of the others on the top. I just noticed that. We're gonna let it ride. Nothing major. Just a little pop of color.
Can you explain why a background check by a potential employer showed an assault charge?
Well, maybe it was after you punched me in my face and stole my car. Maybe it was after you.
And then I just did that on the other side. So you know, we're gonna even that out.
The witness probably called it in.
Well, I'm sure someone inside would be interested in trying to get their side of this.
They all know I'm a good family man.
What do you want?
Just kind of bring that up and then lighten it.
Us.
Dip it down.
My family.
Okay, Jeff. I'm gonna let you in on a secret. Okay?
Being able to kind of
At night,
fix those mistakes on the spot has been sort of a learned behavior.
you were gonna kill me.
What are you talking about?
Let me tell you. I was
And I learn something new every time I paint another banner, because everybody has different heraldry, and in the end, you don't want everything to look exactly the same anyway.
That is batshit crazy talk.
So, I don't think, I don't know if no, I'm not going to do anything on the green. I think that's too much. So, at that point, I'm going to call that banner done. I'm going to let both of them dry up completely, take a few pictures, and call this tutorial a day. So, if you are interested in learning more, I will be posting a more advanced tutorial in the future on how to do a longer, more traditional SCA style standard. Feel free to visit my website, www.annasrome.com, and reach me by email, which I will just type into the section below. Otherwise, it's a little bit too busy to speak out loud in a video. But thank you for watching.